I want to put just enough fear in you about fire that you don't horse around by the fire, that you treat the fire with a great deal of respect so that you don't wind up being part of the fire. But you should be able to enjoy a fire as long as you're enjoying it safely. Well, he's talking. I started talking. I interrupted him.
So done. I still want to know.
Go ahead. Hey, Kyle, she wants to know if you're done.
I'm pretty much done. The biggest thing, guys, is use common sense. Don't be sticking your body parts in there. Make sure you get the water by it. Make sure your tents are hard enough way that if a wind comes by and blows on the fire.
Try not to freeze the smoke.
That's, yeah. Biggest thing, like, you want to make sure you're far enough away from the fire, all your stuff is far enough away from the fire, that if a big wind comes by and hits the fire, it's not going to set stuff on fire. So you want to keep it from spreading. That's not fun.
Okay.
Aaron, you probably shouldn't be sticking sticks in the fire unless you're keeping it.
Also a thing, if you really got to move stuff around the fire, use a metal, something metal to push it around.
Like a
don't
shovel.
be sticking sticks in it. Shovel.
If it's broken, don't use it.
Okay. I want to show you one last thing before we go to start building your fire. How many of you have ever heard of a fuzz stick?
Fuzz. Is it a stick made out of fuzz?
No, but good guess. So you guys have heard of a fuzz stick?
My sister made
If you can see from way back there, I'll move up here. You can see that we've shaved up to where we have all these little shaves of wood that are along the stick. Go in the top first 4 or 5 inches of the stick is usually enough. It doesn't need to be a real big stick. You're probably better off with it being a little bit of a smaller stick. And what that does is it makes lots of tinder kind of out of this stick, but it's still stuck to the stick. So it's little shavings of wood that you've shaved up just enough to be able to get more oxygen up around there. It increases the surface area of what can burn on the stick, if that makes sense to you. So to do this, if you have a knife, and this is where it's important that you have a sharp knife and a good knife. Remember, you're always cutting away from you, and it's kind of like whittling, but you're not cutting the wood completely off. So you push, and you can see that it curls it up a little bit, and you just keep going around the stick, and I'm using my thumb to be able to push on the back of it to get a little more force so that I have complete control and I don't go too far and cut it off completely. And so I use my thumb to push and trim it up. And I just turn the stick a little bit each time so that I can get the next one. That's the goal. You want it to kind of look like a Christmas tree when you get done. And then when you get all the way around on one, then you go and you start another row. So you see here now I have several rows of fuzz on the stick. Now you may have noticed that the bark was trimmed off of this end. The reason is because if you have a stick that, especially if it has a lot of bark, and you go to fuzz it up, what you wind up is the bark just starts falling off. And so you start off by trimming the bark off of it so that you can get down to the wood part. Now that bark that you're trimming off of there could be great tinder. So wherever you're going to build your fire, shave that off of it into your little fire space because it's going to burn very well. But then you just go around your stick, and it may take a little bit, and this is where learning patience helps. You don't want to get in too big of a hurry that you do a poor job of it, because then you're not really doing yourself any favors. Going through the motions doesn't really help. But now I have a part of a fuzz stick. And so looks like a little Christmas tree. So, especially if a lot of tinder is not available, you may have to make your own tinder. Maybe everything is wet and you need to get a stick. The stick is dry, just a lot of the grass is wet. So maybe you need to get this and make you a fuzz stick to get enough tinder to get a fire going. Any questions? In a little bit. As soon as I dismiss everybody, you can go and throw your sticks away on your way. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to, right out here in the middle, I want you to go and I want you to be in groups of maybe 3 or 4. and you're going to work together to be able to build a fire that you think will be able to be lit with one match. Okay? I have some matches. Hold on. Raise your hand if you can hear me. I'm not done. I'm not quite done yet. As soon as you're dismissed, I want you to go in groups of 3 or 4, and you can put yourself in groups. I want you to go find the tinder, the kindling. Don't get any big logs, because our goal is not to build a big fire that's going to burn all weekend. Our goal is just to get it burning enough that we can tell that the fire would be able to continue burning. Okay? So we're not trying to get a fire that's big enough to like cook hot dogs over. You are. Use them safely. If you don't use your knife properly, then your knife privileges will be taken away. Okay? So, go ahead and go and find your materials. Your fire shouldn't need to be any bigger than about this. Right out here in the grassy area. If you like. Will make it work much better. But this tall brown grass that you see, if it wasn't wet, it makes great tinder.
I can go wax them down if I stay. Get back on. I'm gonna wax them down.
Good kindling, you'd want to break it up a little bit, because your goal is to start out with a small teepee fire. So if you had this as your kindling, then you have a nice little teepee fire getting going. You got to kind of brace it up. Now you want to get some tinder and put under there. And tinder, except for this being wet, dry brown grass like this, like you see the brown grass sticking up in the on the edge, like right here. The problem is a lot of So right over there, some. Right here, see all of this brown dead grass? This makes good tinder. Except for this is a little wet, so it may burn well, it may not. Try to find some that's not too wet, and maybe you'll be able to get it to burn. Here you go. But you want more than that. The more you can get, the better. If you start out with just a little bit, it seems like enough. Get more than you think you need, and that way you don't have to build your fire again because you didn't have quite enough. Get way more than you need, and it makes it easier to get going.
Do you think we could burn this?
No, see how green that is?
Yes.
And it doesn't snap, it just kind of bends. That means that this is a green stick. And green sticks, they don't snap. They'll break and you can tear them open. But that green wood doesn't burn very well. Green wood is really wet wood inside there. It still looks like wood, but it's wet. And so it smokes a lot, but it won't burn very well. What you want is a twig that'll snap when you bend it. Let's see if we can find a dry stick, a dead stick, and then you'll be able to see the difference. See how this, it looks dry, but it doesn't snap very well, which tells me that it must still be kind of green on the inside. And so,
like this one. I'll get some dead grass.
see how that snapped into? This makes nice dry kindling. And if you need, like you can pull off this bark, and this bark may be good tinder for you. See how nice and thin that is? And there's some trees that, maybe they've fallen in the woods years or months ago. And so if you pull off that outside bark, underneath that is all of this material that's thin like this. It's almost like paper that's underneath between the bark and the wood of the tree. And if you can pull that out of there, it's almost always dry, even if it's been raining. And it burns just like a newspaper or napkins. Burns really nice, if you can find it.
Yeah, okay.
You'd have to find that by finding a tree that's been fallen and still has the bark on the outside of it. And so they may be out looking.
Oh, don't make that. It's worse making. It's worse making a teepee.
No,
It doesn't work very well making a teepee. Cause
here, do you want to? I can't break this.
thank you.
Well, yeah, but we want smaller sticks.
We want to put the really small, tiny twigs, really tiny twigs on the bottom, and then the bigger sticks on the top. But teepees don't work very well. When I built it last time, we didn't use a teepee and we got it with no.
I know, isn't it amazing? Taste out. God, you're too close. This one.
Wait, my Christmas tree did not work out well.
It's okay if they're hard to break. Because they're so old.
No, he just said that if they're hard to break, it might be dead, but it might be still a little green.
Some of these are hard to break. But
I really want to try using a pocket knife, but I probably shouldn't.
no, you have learned all.
He didn't teach you like all of it.
Are they just differently than we did?
Like way different.
I'm just gonna practice this at my house.
See, this is how you can split little woods. Right like that.
So guys, we need more grass.
Right.
But harder to do.
I'll be right back.
What sticks?
Right, and then this is your kindling.
Put the
so get
sticks
more
on
of this
top.
Stuff, okay?
You taking a video?
Here you go.
Stop.
I feel like I've been working a long time and I don't see anything.
I'll go get more dinosaurs.
Oh, okay, look at his.
Really good diagram.
There you go. So let's leave it put, Aubrey. Keep these sticks broken up like this, and just set them off to the side for now. So we don't want to add too much more to this because we got a good amount going here.
I can't break this.
Use your foot. Got it? There you go. All right, I'll be right back. I got to make a walk around and make sure everyone's doing good. All right. If you're looking for big tinder, the dry stuff along the line right down there, as long as you stay on the top foot or so, don't pull it out of the ground. Just stay on the top foot. That stuff is super dry. As it gets down towards the ground though, it's wet. Okay.